Hey guys, I wanted to make a video discussing intermittent fasting and portion control. And I made a comment on Facebook that generated a bit of a buzz, and let me do this to kind of clarify where I'm coming from on things. It seems that there is some discord in what the term intermittent fasting even means. That's why I posed the idea, the concept, the notion. I just said it bluntly. I said pretty much everyone who's eating is doing some form of intermittent fasting. The only difference is in the duration and the frequency of the fasting periods, of the intermissions. So when you look at it that way, maybe that kind of clarifies where I'm coming from. I realize that there are some, let's say, name brand diets maybe that would be labeled as intermittent fasting. Probably not what I'm talking about here. Maybe it'll make more sense after I explain it this way. So at any rate, let's just look at some things. So everything you eat, we've all heard macronutrients, and those are protein, carb, fat. Everything you eat is composed of those three components in some shape, form, or fashion. It may not have any of a particular, but nonetheless, we can pretty much dice up all of our food and pour it into these little buckets in different proportions based on what it's made of. Okay, so let's look at the standard American diet, the SAD diet, and typically what you find, and I'll kind of go on a bar chart form. So just for your standard American diet, most of your food, fast food, processed food, you end up with a whole lot of carb and a whole lot of fat. You got a high carb, high fat diet. So I'll just make just let these represent the whole bunch of carb, and you got a whole bunch of fat. Who knows, one's higher than the other, doesn't matter. But regardless, you still got protein, but chances are, proportionally speaking, it's probably not even but a third of one of those, if even. So a little bit of protein, whole lot of carb, whole lot of fat. More or less, what that does, you end up with someone who's probably built like that. Okay, all right. So with intermittent fasting, the way I approached it, and with portion control, the way I commonly see those two things being implemented, all they're really doing is taking these three things and more or less just doing a little less of it. So that's what you end up with. We cut the fat in half. We cut the carb in half. We cut the protein in half because we're only portioning about half of what we used to eat, just assuming they're only doing half of what they used to eat. Or maybe we're only eating for a third of the day. We're doing that intermittent fasting, so we give ourselves this itty bitty window to cram as much of the same stuff down our gullets as we were before. That's the difference, guys. A lot of times when people do an intermittent fasting diet, they're not really doing this. Sometimes they change what they're eating. That's different than what I'm talking about. I'm simply saying the people who do portion control and the people that do intermittent fasting, a lot of those, this is what I've seen them doing, and that's where they make their error. That's what I was addressing, okay? So all they end up with, instead of looking like this, well, now they're just a smaller version of the soft and flabby. They weigh less, they lost weight. Still soft and flabby, just smaller. Okay. The devil's in the details, the proportions. That's what I mean when I say it's about proportion control, not portion control. You gotta change these ratios to change the makeup of this, the softness or firmness of this. That's where the magic happens. Usually, if you can raise your protein up, and then lower one or the other, whether you choose to go high fat, low carb, keto style, whatever, or higher carb, lower fat, high protein, typical 40-40-20 bodybuilding type diet. then you may start changing what this looks like. Instead of just simply losing weight, you may actually start losing the softness and maintaining the firmness, and then you start really having some results. That's all I was talking about, guys. Hopefully that clarifies some of the questions that were beginning to bubble up, some of the assumptions that were embedded in some of the questions I saw. That's how I'm looking at it. It's proportion control, not portion control, that needs to happen for the magic to happen. And if your doctor gave you an intermittent fasting diet to follow, hey, that's great, but odds are it affected that stuff. It was not just a simple reduction in what you were already doing. That's what I'm getting at. Thanks, guys. I appreciate your time.